The world has never changed faster and will never change slower. Welcome to the We Are Future series, where we get to talk to global thought leaders and industry experts on all things digital, technology and innovation, and how it impacts the way we live, work, act and interact. Now tune in for those candid conversations and be part of creating the future of work. Today we are joined by Tom Sigelski, and we want to talk about everything future of work, how to optimize human potential and how to prepare for roles that don't exist yet. So I would like to kick off the talk series by Tom, you introducing yourself on who you are, what are you doing, and how did you get to where you are now?
Okay, no problem. And thank you for having me, Petra. I'm super excited to be part of this one, so thank you. As you've mentioned, my name's Tom Sigelski, and I am currently I do run a consultancy to different businesses on people development, internal culture, leadership, teamwork, strategy, and in some cases, partnerships and developing strategy around partnerships and how best to approach with that. How did I get here? It's an interesting one. The majority of my sort of professional career was spent working in and around Red Bull energy drink. Started worked with them for a duration of just under 17 years, which sounds like a very long, well, it is quite a long time, I guess. But ultimately started in the sales team and moved across to set up a program here in Australia which focused on integrating the brand into different fields of popular culture, music, dance, film, television, art design, whatsoever. So I set that program up and was one of the first 9 globally. So we all worked together on the development of the strategy for that department within the Red Bull marketing mix. And ultimately that led me to working out of the global head office, just outside of Salzburg, about 3 hours drive from where I think you lived, Petra. But so lived over there for 3 years, and that's really, yeah. Lived over there for 3 years, and that experience very much set me on the path that I'm on now. So as opposed to focusing on, I mean, it was still part of my consideration set for sure, but my role was very much focused on redefining the strategy that was being used globally, working with 40 subsidiaries globally on their 5-year plans. I conducted 4 pretty sizable consumer insights projects while I was there, oversaw some pretty substantial commercial partnerships, and also worked on the development and deployment of a development program that was specific for the culture marketing team. So reworked their onboarding process, their induction process, and developed a series of workshop modules relevant to the team and the ambitions of the team, strategic and otherwise, in order for them to get a better understanding of the expectations of the business, given that they were working on the projects they were, as well as some tools, techniques, skills and experience that would allow them to be successful in those roles. So that was what set me on my path. I moved back from Austria at the end of 2016 and started the Human Sherpa, which has predominantly resulted in the businesses that I'm working with, the individuals that I'm working with, being generated by word of mouth. And again, it's really a consultancy, and whether I'm doing one-on-one coaching or building and deploying workshops for leadership teams or a broader business, and helping develop strategy is sort of my key focus areas these days.
Excellent. And you mentioned you started your career in sales and then moved slowly but surely into more to the internal comms and culture departments. How did that pivot come about? Did you initiate it, or was it kind of pushed to you? Or can you talk about this pivot a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Moving from sales to a very consumer marketing focused through to an internal culture and development focus. I went after the sales role, and I remember quite clearly getting tapped on the shoulder down at the Formula One in Melbourne when Red Bull Racing launched its first ever car and team. and the head of communications tapped me on the shoulder and said, there's an opportunity to focus in a different way your strengths towards culture, and we think that you're the right person for the job, which was a very nice compliment. And it also my response was mixed. So they obviously saw something in me that they thought could fit that space, and went after it. And it turns out, that's kind of evolved over time to, moving up to Austria, and I guess focusing even further into sort of that internal culture. And I don't know whether optimization is the right word, but it was really about, where are we now? Where do we want to get to? And how do we direct our people via our strategy and the sharing of knowledge, skills and experience so that we can get there sooner than later.
That's excellent. And you also mentioned you developed 5 major customer insights pieces. What has changed over the time or the years that you have conducted those in terms of consumer requirements and their expectations on brands, on companies, on products? Can you talk a bit more about this?
Absolutely. There's so much that's changed by way of obviously the fragmentation of the media landscape, the way that people are interacting, the way that they're communicating, the way that they're forming communities both on and offline. Lots of different behavioural changes based on either new technologies or human needs evolving based on what's available to them. And the idea of the consumer insights research was obviously to get a bit of an insight, a bit of a framework around how these changes were evolving. And obviously, insights pieces aren't the silver bullet solution. There's certainly a bit of a litmus test or a guideline, but they're not the be all and end all. And I think that some key things that came out of it, out of the researches that we did, were around the concepts of making sure that Red Bull as a brand wasn't making assumptions around how people wanted to experience things, how they wanted to be spoken to, how the creative was put together. There's a lot of come and speak to us and understand what we need and learn to speak our language, go and be where the audience was and get to know their passions, their ambitions in the past, the present, future of whatever the scene was that you were focused on, be it music, dance, film, television, art, design, whatsoever, was a big one. And I think another one was, so it's get to know me, come and meet me where I am. Don't tell me to change my behavior to suit your brand. And the other, I think, big piece to come out of that, amongst many things, was around the concept of control or input. So consumers wanting to have control over their experience and, in an ideal scenario, be able to have input into that prior to it being delivered. So you think about brands nowadays treating user-generated content as absolute gold. It's validation, it's verification, it's authentic, it's genuine, it's endorsement, all of those sorts of things. So that idea of having input and being able to participate and interact, not just receive direction or information from a brand, was another big takeout.
Mm-hmm. And how has this changed consumer behavior, impacted the roles that Red Bull was playing or is playing now, and also the changed skill sets to meet those changed demands internally? How have you made this change, this upskill, this pivot, whatever it might have been?
Absolutely. So I guess Red Bull Red Bull would say they're the first brand to create amazing, high quality, high definition content around adventure sports and culture and all that sort of thing. They started very early in the piece as a marketing tool. But if you look back at the early content of Red Bull, and when I say, this is up to and including, 5-6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, a lot of it was, in fact, most of it wasn't really telling a story. And Again, consumers want to be engaged. They want to feel things. They want to think about things. They want to, be able to interact with what's going on. So I think that, storytelling as a topic became enormous for Red Bull. It's, content marketing is one thing, but that's not storytelling. So what do we need to do about this? So in regards to roles and skill sets, I worked very closely with the talent team up in Austria, actually, to create a storytelling workshop. So we did a whole bunch of investigation and interacted with, very well-known brands like sort of Pixar and famous directors and the like, so that we could kind of unearth and identify the way that we wanted people to tell stories at Red Bull. And then from there, if it was existing employees or new employees, and I think they're still doing it to this day, there was a remit that everyone that worked at Red Bull needed to participate in the Story Academy, because that was identified as a key opportunity to continue to move forward with an audience in a way that was very human, very emotionally primal, and could continue to drive growth for the business. As far as sort of, roles and the importance of different roles, obviously from whether it's Red Bull Media House or, the communications team or the brand team, in fact, there was certainly a strong emphasis put on ensuring that they were given, they were hired based on their skills in regards to storytelling and bringing those things to life with different perspective and story angles, as well as provided the training to understand how Red Bull wanted to tell stories.
Yeah. And you have touched a little bit on the brand side of things, which is a very close topic to my heart. What do you think is the importance of a brand, maybe a consumer brand, an employer brand, a personal brand, when it comes to the future of work, and how has Red Bull built their brand? Because everyone knows, well, actually just know the German saying Verleitflügel, Red Bull Verleitflügel. Not even sure what it is in English. Yeah. How did Red Bull go about this?
One thing that I was that went around in my head a little bit when I first started with the brand was, all of the ingredients of the product are printed on the back of the can, not only by name but by measurement. Mm-hmm. So, what's stopping people? Obviously there would be some legislation depending on the market, but I guess you get my drift there, whereby it was all there in front of people, and what set it apart, what made people emotionally connect with and aspire to, either purchase the product or be part of a Red Bull experience, was the brand and its association with, whether it was adventure sports or music events or dance events or whatsoever, wherever it was relevant to the different audiences that Red Bull was trying to talk to, there was that, that one consistent, the bulls and the sun, or the blue and silver, or whatsoever. So I liken it to, I don't know, if you've got I was speaking to someone about this today, actually. If you've got a project that you want a team of people or a whole company to both be aware of and focus on, it's a lot easier to get people to pick that up and run with it, as well as share it if it has a name. So as opposed to saying, so this year's project is to increase profitability by 2.75%, and away we go. Everyone goes, well, what does that mean? Well, let's call it 3%. If you were to call it Project 3, people can grab onto that very easily, and they can, engage with it, and are probably more likely to want to understand what it's about and get involved. So it's no different from my perspective, I would say, with having a level of consistency through establishing and building a brand. It's something that people can hang on to. It's something people can refer to. It's something that people can connect on. Oh, you like that too? Or, wow, I didn't go to that one, but I saw this, or whatsoever. Have you seen this piece of content from that brand, as an example, and obviously thinking about it from a Red Bull standpoint. I think that the same holds true from, whether it's consumer facing, whether it's employer and the status quo, or the legacy, or the ambition, or a personal brand. It's something that kind of rises above the tactical and operational topics. I'd say it connects with the strategic topics, but it sort of takes you, thinking about a personal brand, for example, it kind of lifts you above, a particular job that you've had, or, you don't necessarily rely 100% on something that you've produced or delivered. Obviously, your experience, training, skill set whatsoever plugs into that brand, but it does kind of elevate you. So as far as I would imagine the future of work and that being important, I was reading an article, I want to say last week, on LinkedIn. I'm not sure whether it was you that posted it, Petra, but anyway, the title of the article was "Jack of all trades, master of none. Is that a problem?" ? And I think that, if we're talking about personal brand now and the future of work, it feels to me like that's ever increasingly where maybe not the entire workforce, there'll still be some expertise and very highly specialised people needed, but ever increasingly that idea of the human focus and being able to interact well and collaborate and care for humans and be creative and develop and work with humans to develop them, be it personally or professionally, is something that sort of rises above all of that very operational sort of topic, and having a personal brand that's well established that people can see, connect with, and obviously understand, becomes quite a powerful thing when you're talking about working across many different things.
And you've also established Red Bull's Global People Development and Training Program. Can you talk a little bit more about how did you go about it, especially on a global scale? If there's a difference between the different workforces around the globe and different continents, and how did you prepare staff for what's today, and more importantly, what's the future of work, and what's their role tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the easiest way to outline the process was it was a version of design thinking. There were some thoughts and ideas around what needed to happen. We need to have, a more robust set of frameworks in place for project management or whatsoever. But when we sort of went out there and which, that's quite a broad topic, and you're talking about quite a few people around the world. So understanding and getting out there and speaking with, or surveying, or giving people the opportunity to input around different topics and what they saw as being the highest priorities was key and very much part of the initial phase of the development of that program. I think alongside that, there was a need for us to obviously build a structure around the style of approach that we thought would be most appropriate based on, we don't want to have people attending workshops every month and being out of the business for days and days at a time. So how do we structure the program across different topics in a way that, is it something that builds over time, or is it something that we deliver all at once, or how do we do that? So there was those two parts of investigation that we did in order to ensure, it's no different to how the brand investigates different scenes, be it freestyle motocross or breakdancing. It's like, let's go and speak to the people and understand where they're at, where they want to be, and how we can potentially support that ambition. It was very much the same process. And then as far as sort of, once we got that information back and sense check that, we were able to think about how can we build this in a way that doesn't just create another layer or series of layers of complexity. It's much harder to simplify than it is to complicate, I think. The reason you couldn't fit it on one page is because you didn't have enough time, is a saying from the advertising business. So that idea of very much being considerate of the fact that there was already strong skills, there was already a load of experience. How could we, synthesize that into a simplified process, depending on the topic of focus, in a way that would allow more time for localization, creativity, adaptation, different cultural needs whatsoever. So that was how we went about it, was try to break it down. And then, of course, in the in the deployment of each of the different modules that we were running, and we didn't run it the first time and go, wow, that was perfect, let's leave it exactly like that. We, without a doubt, had a process of review and refine, and that's well, up until when I finished with the business, we were still doing that to try and enhance the experience and keep it current. If there was something that didn't make sense anymore for the business, then what's in its place, or do we just leave that out? So that was the process for each of the modules.
And where did you end up in terms of the delivery? Was it in the end an ongoing process, or was it individual modules, or what was the best way of delivering it?
Yeah, so and I think we might get onto this topic if we have time, but that idea of well, I'm very, very passionate about when it comes to, if you think of the 70-20-10 ratio of 70% being learning on your own, 20% being leaning on peers, mentors, colleagues, more senior people whatsoever, and then 10% being very much in that formal training workshop, go somewhere and learn something and interact with your peers on a particular topic. For that 10% piece, the team that I was working in was pretty adamant that we wanted that to be in person. And we ended up landing at, we'll put together workshops in a way that we go end to end, start to finish on that topic. So come to X location and we'll talk storytelling for 2 days. And when you leave, you'll have a clear understanding about how Red Bull both expects and how Red Bull tells stories, and you'll have the tools, techniques, and knowledge to be able to go about that process. So instead of saying, let's do a bit of storytelling and then we'll build on that the next time we get together and add something else to it, that wasn't really a practical approach. So we did end to end. And then another key thing that I was adamant about was to have as many perspectives as possible in the room without over-engineering it. What do I mean by that? Rather than going to Mumbai to run a particular topic for that whole business, we would select a topic of project management, and people would come in from different markets from all over the world. And that idea of there was 2 of us facilitating the workshop, but we'd have up to 30 or 40 people in the room, and the opportunity for learning to happen based on their experience and their knowledge and what they've seen and what works and what doesn't was also a big focus for us. As let's get this knowledge sharing piece happening so that it's feels less hierarchical in regards to what's going on here. It's these people can interact with each other. They're each other's peers, and they've got amazing knowledge and experience. So to start to set up those networks whereby they could lean on and reach out to each other was also a key part of it.
And what have been the learnings and the takeouts from your time at Red Bull to set up now the Human Sherpa and the programs that you're delivering?
Look, I think I mean, obviously I learned a hell of a lot in regards to how to approach designing different learning. And it's for me now, I would follow the same process in putting a strategy together for a brand as I would in putting a particular workshop around leadership, for example. That idea of sort of doing that investigation, and I don't know, one of the things that I took with me and I still use to this day is that concept of slowing down to speed up. So investing the time up front and not rushing to the solution and saying, this is it. I know what we need to do here. If that's the case, cool. Just put that to one side. And who are your key stakeholders? Who are going to be your participants? Where are they now? Where do they want to be? Have you sense checked that? What other programs are in place? What level of commitment is going into this? Those sorts of things. So that was a big takeout for me, and that's certainly a process that I still employ today as far as how I interact with topics of strategy or people development or coaching or whatsoever. It's making sure that you're understanding of the status quo before starting to run off in different directions and start throwing throwing solutions before you understand what really is the problem. I recently did some training for myself in neuro-linguistic programming, and had a couple of very interesting experiences during that training with different participants around what they initially wanted to be coached on versus after a few questions and getting down to very high levels of specificity what actually was the need and the want that they were after. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've taken from it. And then I would also say, in line with that, it's not needing to have all the answers, and knowing where and more importantly where you can't add value, and making sure that you're calling that out.
And you just mentioned in terms of the coaching, not always is the first answer the right answer, and if you dig a little bit deeper, then you will uncover what's really important to this person. And your tagline is also realizing human potential. Why is it so important, and especially for the future of work?
Yeah, so I think I guess that could certainly come across as sounding a bit buzzy, but I just have a real passion for helping people. And whether that's on a personal level or on a professional level, but finding ways that I can provide frameworks or platforms or interactions or discussions or pose questions whereby people can start to investigate it for themselves or investigate it with a colleague. So, think about it from a coaching standpoint. That's not mentoring and it's not teaching. It's helping someone get to the heart of what it is that they would like to achieve. What are their ambitions? What do they want to address whatsoever? So, that idea of, making sure that you're not rushed or uncomfortable with someone needing to take some time to actually get to where they want to be is a really important part of that process. I'm not sure if I've answered your question there, Petra.
Yeah, no, definitely. And in terms of the future of work, where do you see the trends moving to? What do you understand under the future of work? What's your definition?
It's there's lots going on in that space. I don't think you need to look too far to find many, many pieces of insight around where it's headed. And I think that something that's keeps kind of coming back up to me and through different interactions or things that I'm reading or seeing or whatsoever is that having a people first process or approach, seems to be continuing to rise. That idea of not just talking, we're going to have a great company culture, and then not doing anything about it. This feels to me that there's certainly a heightened focus that continues to rise around people and culture. And if you go to any job site, you'll see that there's a lot of focus being applied by many different businesses in a way that shows substantial commitment. And with that, a lot more internal roles in the people and culture space. Canva recently had advertised an internal full-time position for a coaching position. So thinking about that and how that plugs into the future, I think that, people or human beings are societal in nature. They want connection. They want to interact with other humans. Hopefully people that they like or they respect or whatsoever, but it's just a basic need. So having programs and focuses in place that allow for that, I think will be a continued evolution as far as the sorts of roles that are going to be important into the future, as well as if you think about it from a retention or lack of attrition standpoint, lack of regretted losses, engagement, discretionary effort, all of those sorts of things that can plug into a better outcome for the businesses that are willing to commit, I think is super important. And it's, I think also the diversification of the workforce, people working remotely, or, people contracting in special skills or experience as and when it's needed, all those sorts of things, to come to a point where teams can quickly connect, and having a strategy around people and getting them to connect quickly so that they can get on and get the work done, I think is very, very important. So that idea of if I think about the future of work and technology, obviously that's very much coming down the line as well. Or it's here. It's not coming down the line, but it's here. And the automation or digitization of manual roles, that's going to happen. And I was thinking about this, coming from working in the popular culture space, drawing a parallel in that situation to the major record labels back in the day, who were aware of but didn't really do much about the advent and arrival of things like iTunes and streaming. And as a result, they kind of got left behind. Some were lucky and others less so. And were left kind of scrambling and trying to find ways to adjust their business and the people in their business in order to continue to be commercially viable. So that idea of, tech and digitization, it doesn't need to, I think, thinking again, the future of work, to be fearful of it, I think is a mistake. To be proactive with it and think about, again, those more human characteristics around behaviours and collaboration, and what those people and individuals can be retasked or repurposed within a business to do is super exciting, and has huge potential on both a human and a commercial front, I would say.
And to wrap up the conversation, are there any practical tips that you can give us on how we as an individual can realize our human potential and prepare for the future of work?
Yeah. Yes. I would think that, cliches are cliches because they're true. Failing to plan is planning to fail. It's not hard to, I've just actually recently started journaling and, setting up and thinking about, well, where am I now? Where do I want to be? What do I want to achieve? Creating awareness. Awareness is definitely curative. I heard that as part of the training that I did on neuro-linguistic programming as well. It's very hard to realize your potential if you haven't defined what that is, nor have a think about what it's going to take for you to get there. So really starting to just slow it down and say, okay, cool, where do I want to be? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be known? Another way to think about it is, and maybe this comes into some of the things you do, Petra, with the people that you work with, is, what do you want to be known for? What do you want to be famous for? And not in a vain celebrity way. It's, what contribution do I want to make? And am I operating, focusing, interacting in a way that is going to achieve that outcome? And if not, why am I doing that? So that idea of, mapping out those sorts of things, thinking about, what your values and what sort of behaviours are important for you as well is, I think, another really important thing. But ultimately, understanding yourself and taking the time not to just think about it, but to actually capture some thoughts and ideas that are important is already, I think, a great step towards that. One of the methods, I guess, that we shared as part of the project management stuff that I built for Red Bull was the 10-10-10 rule. So thinking about decisions or actions or words used, are you going to be okay with it in 10 minutes, 10 months and 10 years? So just sort of being mindful of that. And, I think we've talked a lot about work. There's also plenty of things that you can be doing for yourself on a personal level that can absolutely contribute to that. And it's, eating well, and it's, your form of meditation, whether that's boxing or running or cycling or, sitting down on the couch and listening to the Headspace app for 10 minutes, whatever that might be. But really looking after yourself on the health and personal front, I think, is super, super important.
I couldn't agree anymore. You can't pour from an empty cup, and in the end it all starts with knowing where you are now and where your North Star is, because otherwise, if you don't know where you're going, any road will lead you there, and anyone else will take control over your destiny and puts us out of the driver's seat, which we obviously don't want to have. Okay, Tom, finally, where can everyone find you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place would be LinkedIn. So I think I'm the only Tom Sigelski on there. I haven't seen any others so far, and I'm on there sort of every day. So if anyone would like to have a chat or get in touch, I would say LinkedIn is the best place. And then of course my email is tom@thehumansherpa.com.au.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait for everyone to tune into this conversation and share their feedback with us. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your insights.
Thanks so much for having me, Petra. It's lovely to talk to you.
Same to you. Thank you.
And that wraps up another insightful conversation about the future of work. And now we want to hear from you. What was the biggest takeaway from this conversation? Make sure you share your learnings on LinkedIn and also tag our guest speakers. And of course, if you or somebody you know has some more interesting take on the future of work, send us an email to contact@wearefuture.com. Until next time, and keep creating the future of work.